Welcome to Ames Public Library, both in person and virtually, for Genealogy Plus, a program brought to you through a partnership with Ames Public Library and the Story County Genealogical Society. I'm Megan, I'm the Adult Services Manager here, and I'm happy to welcome you to our program this morning. The library's mission is to connect you to the world of ideas, which we do through diverse and inclusive resources and programming like today's event. For those of you with us, wow, in person, the room is equipped with an induction loop for the benefit of hearing aid users. To use that, please switch your hearing aid to T. And for those of us with you virtually on Zoom, we'll be muting your microphones during the presentation. So please submit any questions you may have via the chat function, which you should find at the bottom of your screen. I will be monitoring the chat and we'll make sure that your questions are shared when appropriate. If you get bumped out of the Zoom session, just follow the link back and you should be able to get right back in. And live captioning is enabled. If you're not seeing captions and would like to, you can turn them on by clicking the caption button in your Zoom menu. For everyone, today's event is being recorded and will be posted to the Ames Public Library YouTube channel. And there will be questions, time for questions at the end. So if you're on Zoom, please put your questions in the chat. If you're here in person, I will bring this handy dandy microphone around to you so that the folks on Zoom can hear you as well. With that, I will introduce our speaker, Mary Lore.
Okay, thank you, Megan. And thank you to the Ames Public Library for co-sponsoring this Genealogy Plus. I'm going to talk about Google tools for genealogical research. I think a lot of people know Google, but there might be a few things you don't know about it. So hopefully today, even though Google was certainly never invented for genealogists, we found creative ways to use it. Oops. Including maybe getting the screen to advance here. It worked before and now it's decided.
I feel like this happens every time.
Yeah.
I think we just need like usually. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, thank you. That's why we need trusty librarians. Thank you, Megan. It's good to remember that what Google has here today might not be here tomorrow. They have, over the years, they've had a number of products that they've announced. It's flourished. You may have found it very useful, and then for some reason they just retire it. Usually announce that it's going to be retired, but not always. So be aware of that some of the things I'm talking about today could be part of a changing landscape. Also, you may not use every resource that I'm talking about today, but there might be something that you haven't thought of that you could use. The other thing I'd want to say is you don't pay directly to use most Google products, but it's also important to remember, and this probably holds true for most things on the internet, if you're not paying for it, chances are you are the product. That is your data, your information, and all that can often isn't. If it's not sold, it's used for advertising purposes primarily. So you need to keep that in mind. You can set your Google settings to a higher level of privacy, and I'm not going to go into that today. I'll just say that if you're concerned about privacy as far as searching on Google, consider an alternative search engine and browser, and there's one called DuckDuckGo, and I have that listed in the handout. By the way, there is a handout for this. It's listed both on the web page of the Ames Public Library and the people in the room here have a copy. I've listed all the URLs, the web addresses for each of the products I'll be mentioning, so you won't need to write down the URL. The other thing at the bottom, I have some alternatives to Google search, which would be Bing, DuckDuckGo, Yahoo, and Start Page. And there are others, but today we'll talk about Google. These are the things that I'm going to talk about in there that I have found the most helpful. Gmail, Google Search, Alerts, Books, Drive, Sites, Keep, Translate, and then a bonus one. So let's go on. Let's go from here. Generally, to make use of the Google tools, you will need a Google account. And it's free. So if you sign up, and once you sign up, to your Google account, you'll see the grid up in the upper right corner. I guess there are 9 small dots. That usually will bring up a menu, as you can see here, and that will list some of the more commonly used sites. You can also drag and drop and rearrange those. So if you use something, your Gmail, if you want that up at the top, you can drag it up to the top. Let's talk about Gmail. I always used to think it stood for Genealogy Mail, and then I found out, well, they stood for Google. It is free. You get up to 15 gigabytes of storage, which is a fair amount. If you want more, you can purchase an additional storage, and I'm not sure exactly what the price is. I don't think it's outrageous, but if you have a lot of photographs, they're going to take a lot of space in there. There's kind of a way around that. You can have more than one Google account and just use a different name. You might use your middle initial, you might use, I don't know, genealogy person, something at gmail.com. At any rate, that's one way above it. So that would give you an additional 15 gigabytes of storage. One thing I like about Gmail is that you can organize your incoming mail into folders. Sometimes they call them labels, but it's still the same concept of how you organize it. It's fairly secure. Attachments are scanned prior to download for the attachment itself. However, clicking on a link in the email may not always be safe. So that's a separate matter that you have to use some common sense about. Google has a really good search utility. If you want to find a previous email, generally you can type in one of the keywords and it'll bring up that email. And let's see, once it goes into the trash, I think it's deleted after 30 days automatically. But otherwise it stays in there forever until you reach your storage limit, and then you either clean it out or purchase more. Gmail has a good search utility, as I mentioned, and it integrates very nicely with other Google products. So I would say to me, there are a few downsides of not using Gmail. It's been around for a long time. It's very widely used. The phrase, just Google it, or I Google it. Google has become a verb, actually, in that sense. And a lot of people have done that. There were 8.5 billion searches per day, or 6.3 million searches per minute. So when you think about the search function of Google, it's fantastic. I could only imagine 20 years ago having access to the amount of information that we have. That being said, it's easiest just to type in a name or search term into Google, and that works, but it might work better if you use some techniques. One thing, if you want an exact search term, you can put quotation marks around it, so that'll search it for that exact phrase. The order of the search terms might affect what you see. So I would tend to put the ones that are higher priority, put those first in the search for rank. It may or may not work. If you don't find what you want, just redo your search, reorder the words. Google has some type of stop list for words, but it's not actually published. But words like the, and, or are usually ignored. And I say usually because there's a search technique using and or, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But capitalization and punctuation are ignored. So uppercase, lowercase, just type it in. You don't have to worry about it. One really handy search technique is to use an asterisk as a wild card. So if you're searching for an ancestor's name and you don't know if they used a middle initial, a middle name, if you put in a asterisk which is the Shift 8 key on most keyboards. So I did John asterisk Vest, that would pick up John J. Vest or whatever letter or any name. So it's very useful. Something to keep in mind if you're not sure, or if you're not sure of the spelling. The minus sign, if you put that immediately before a word, it will help to eliminate a lot of results. For example, if you were searching on the word Lincoln, but you don't want anything related to Abraham Lincoln and you don't want anything related to a town in Nebraska called Lincoln, put a minus before those terms. That tells Google, leave those search terms out of the results. My maiden name was Swans or Schwans, and there used to be an ice cream company with that name. So to search for that, I could put in a minus sign before frozen and food and delivery, and that would pretty much clear out anything on that company and get it more just to the Swans. Also, here's a case where I said you could use and or. If you want to talk about search for John Kennedy, or you don't know if it was Jack Kennedy, you could put the word or in uppercase between the two search terms. But the thing is, it has to be uppercase. You could also substitute and there, and you could have John and Jack Kennedy. So then it would bring up both. So I like to start broad when I search and then focus and change and refine the search to add search terms or delete them. Your experience may vary, but I say go for it. I was just talking to a gentleman who said he'd put his a name into Google and had found some information about ancestors he wouldn't have known any other way. My favorite story about that is I put the name of my great-great-grandfather in to Google probably in about 2008, back when Google and so forth was just getting started. And I got a website with a whole lot of information. It was in German, but I could still make it out. I was so excited because this listed a lot of my ancestors in Germany that I didn't know about, because the name I had entered was in fact the immigrant ancestor. I was so happy, I sent an email to the web manager at the address listed at the bottom of the screen. Well, that led to an exchange of emails. The gentleman was coming to the United States who had set up this website. He came and visited us, and a few years later, we went and visited them in Germany. So you never know what happens when you enter a name into Google. This is the advanced search page. And to get to that, you almost have to Google it. For some reason, Google doesn't make a direct link to it on their search screen, but it's also on the website. I'm sorry, on the handout. And I would say just bookmark it. In this way, you don't have to keep track of all those terms. Should I use quotation marks? Should I use it? A minus sign? You can fill in here with any language or any region, and you can put filters on for what you want to. And on the right side, it does a really good job of explaining what that particular search operator does. So just something to keep in mind to refine your search a little bit more. Also, one thing I want to caution you about in search results is you're going to see ads. I mean, it's Google. They're in it to make money. So you'll see the word sponsored as noted here, or you might find the word ad in very small print, but they will be labeled. So if something looks a little bit, do keep that in mind, that's going to be another thing you will often see. Google wants to keep you on that main page when you get the search results. So they're going to throw up stuff like people also search for, or did you mean this or that? So it's kind of an artificial intelligence feedback or refining your search. And this is a change, if you remember, from some years ago. So they're going to throw a lot of things at you. Sometimes they'll bring up YouTube suggestions. And then across the top there, you can see that you can filter your results somewhat more. The default is it's under all, but you can search for other things. Here's another example. People also search for. So they're throwing that into the mix. The longer they keep you on that page, the more you're going to see their ads, okay? There also, I did a search for history of Story County, Iowa, and one of the things they said, see results about, and a couple of books there. So that's another thing they'll put in. There is one thing that Google used to do, but they don't by default show it anymore, and that is the number of results. And to me, that's kind of disappointing because I like to know if there are 2 million results, I'm seeing the best of them supposedly, or if there are only 100, well, then I'll page down a little more. So it helps me evaluate the results a little better. But there is, for right now at least, there's a semi way around that. You click on the word tools up there at the top, and then it will bring it back. And now you see there are 18 million results for history of Story County. So that's one way around it. Just click the tools thing. Another thing that you can do to change the look of your results, if you don't like you want a more stripped down, cleaner display of the results, click on the word web up at the top there, and that will streamline. I don't think it changes the search results as such. It just presents a little bit cleaner display. Finally, there's one other thing that Google has taken away, and you used to be able to click on and find the word cache, which would show you an earlier version of the search results or the pages. And that was helpful when, as Google is claiming, that the website was down, which of course still happens, or maybe it's not even operational anymore. But there is a way, again, there's a way around this, and I'll show it to you. First, I'll just mention it. You click the 3 dots by the URL, you choose more about this page, and then you'll see a link that takes you to the Internet Archive Wayback Machine. So those are the 3 dots. I did a search for Civil War research, and let's say I want to find earlier versions of this particular page by the National Park Service. So by the 3 dots, I click on that, and then it'll bring up more about this page, and you click, that's your second one. Then you may have to scroll down some on that page, and you'll find it where it says see previous versions on Internet Archive. By clicking on that, it will take you to an earlier version. So just again, evidence of how Google is constantly changing. There's another really useful thing for a Google search, and that's called the site search. And the basic idea is you can put your search term, I usually put them in quotation marks. I'm not sure it's necessary, but then you use the word site, colon marks, and then you paste in the URL of the site you're visiting. So going back to our John Vest, if I wanted to search for him on the Story GenWeb page, which is fantastic, by the way, I could just use this particular search of John Vest site and then paste in that. It's a little easier than looking all over the site. And here's an interesting one. Put in Story County Genealogical Society in quotation marks, and then cite Ames Public Library. You'll find lots of stuff. Things you wouldn't find if you were just looking on the opening screen, or even if you went into Summit. So it's a really useful term if you've got a site too that seems overwhelming about where do I even look. So try that one. It also works on websites really well that don't have a search engine. So that's kind of the world of Google searching in a nutshell. Google search does something else called alerts, and sometimes people call this their personal assistant. What you can do is set up an alert, and Google will run a search on your term and notify you when something comes up. You can set it to be to get an email daily, weekly, as it happens, monthly, and then you'll get an email for this. And I just have some examples here of what you could do. You could put in the name of an ancestor, although they're probably not in the, if they're deceased, they're probably not in the headlines now. But at any rate, it's an idea. And another thing is you can put your own name in and see if you're making the web pages. So something to think about. I haven't found this overwhelmingly useful. Theoretically, it is. Maybe I'm just not setting up my alerts the way they should be. Something that really, really has helped me is the Google Books. Google has tried to digitize almost all the books. And I don't know about the copyright thing. That's more evidenced in, you can't always access the full content. But this is valuable, especially for, do you remember those old county history books that were published? They were popular in the late 1800s, early 1900s. They were usually on the county level, and people would submit biographies, and you could get a, you'd have to evaluate how accurate it was. It was just wonderful for a biography of the family. I was able to find an image and a biography of a great uncle, in fact, a couple of them in Clayton County. The other things that you might find, particularly for genealogical research, are family history books, church history books. They'll frequently do one for 25, 50 years, especially centennial ones. And they often will put a membership list in. So you might be able to find your ancestor's name in a book like that. Or the vintage cookbooks, there are a lot of newspapers and periodicals that are available. There used to be a magazine called Ancestry. It ceased publication, but all the issues are on Google Books. Life magazine has all the magazines on Google Books, and those are available. You can get the full content. Life magazine might be useful in the sense that, while probably you aren't going to find the name of your ancestor, you would likely find more the society, that what kind of culture are we talking about, after the war in 1945, 46, maybe during the Depression, what types of things were in the newspapers and were your ancestors dealing with. Another thing that's really useful here are city directories. You will find some of those on Google Books. The interface looks a little bit like this. I put in history of Clayton County. Technically, the word of wouldn't be required. And then I clicked on, to find the ones that were free and that I could find totally, I clicked on the word tools over to the right, and then that brings up under the full view menu. That will mean that you can see the whole thing. And generally that means it's out of copyright or the publisher has made it available. So that will give me history of Clayton County books that I can read entirely online. And a word of caution here, if you find a book or anything source that you like and you get the full view, I would suggest downloading it to your computer, because it might be gone tomorrow. And I've had that happen in a couple of cases. So just because it's out of copyright doesn't mean it's always going to be available. So for your own use, download it to that. And you can also do a feature on Google Books called My Library, and you can save things to your own bookshelf. So you can do, as you can see, reading now and to read and so forth. I haven't really sorted them, but it's a good way to kind of bookmark them. And actually, Google Books is fascinating too. I found, by doing just kind of playing with it, I found a copy of a letter my brother had written to the Board of Pharmacy in South Dakota. I didn't even know about it. So it was kind of interesting. Also, Google Books will give you the chance to, for more editions. So that may give you some other alternatives to see if they have a later one. So Google Books, I think, is just an outstanding tool, and I would really recommend it. Moving on to Google Drive. Google Drive is kind of an online storage system, if you want to call it that, but it's actually much more. It used to be called just Google Docs, but Google Docs is integrated now with Google Drive. It's mostly online, but you can also download the app to your desktop so you can work offline, and then it will sync with what's online. The other advantage of it is you could be working on someone else's computer and still access it from any computer, as long as you can log into your account. Google Drive has a word processor, which is called Google Docs. It's free, so it's not, I would say it's not as powerful as, say, LibreOffice or Microsoft Office or OpenOffice, those. but it does a pretty good job. Google Sheets is a spreadsheet tool. So if you don't want to invest in Excel, consider Google Sheets and see if it works for your purposes. And then finally, Google Slides is comparable to PowerPoint, and that's what this particular presentation was made in. So you can kind of see the kinds of things that you could do. Google also has something called Google Sites. Doesn't get a lot of publicity, but what it does, it's a web hosting service is really what it is. If you remember back in about 2012, 2013, our society, the Story County Genealogical Society, had their first website, and we did it on Google Sites. And it was kind of rudimentary, but over the years it has changed. And what I like it is that, well, the URL, I can't remember, it's something like, if you don't buy a custom domain, it's kind of clunky. It's something like sites.google.com/ and then I think your domain name. We had like Story Genes at that time. And it's a little awkward, but it would work. You can buy a custom domain. Here's an example. Google used to have a custom domain that you could purchase from them for very inexpensively, but that's been sold to Square or Squarespace, I can't remember. But at any rate, so if you wanted to have just a common, well, you could use a family website, or if you want to build your own personal website and not pay somebody big bucks to do it, try making your own family history website. You could showcase your memorabilia. You could put a link to your genealogy. You could tell the stories. It's yours. It's free. So I don't know what you have to lose. Let me give you a couple examples. Here's one about Obion County Public Library. Again, not fancy, but if you were doing a family history one, I think it's really good. You've got things across the top, drop down to add extra pages. And it's, here's another one. This is a Osmond family organization. You can see on the left, they have some in the other categories as opposed to having them across the top. Here's another one that I like that has it. So think about and consider using Google Sites for your own website and just play around with it. You could keep it private for a while you're experimenting. And then if you feel a little more confident, you can make it public or just send the URL to friends or relatives that you want to have access to it. Perhaps you don't want your information public. So at any rate, something to consider, and it's a really inexpensive way to do a website, and it's not difficult to do. In fact, if anybody wants some help with one, I'll be glad to help you with it. Google also has something called Google Keep. It's a note-keeping application similar to Evernote. You may have heard about it, but it's free. Evernote started out, I think it still has a little bit of free side, but they're in it to make money. The thing about Google Keep that I like is that if you're working on a project and you decide, oh, you get an idea, which happens to us when we're working on genealogy, and rather than going down that rabbit hole, an easy way is to jot it into Evernote. You can do it by text, you can just record it, or you can do an image. That way you've made a note of it, maybe for further research. Maybe you're coming across something on one ancestor, but that's not the one you're researching. Make a note of it in Evernote, and then you can access that. Again, it works on a web or a mobile device, so worth doing. Google Translate. You may have heard about this. And one of the things as genealogists we often have to do is deal with things in a foreign language that we may or may not understand. Google Translate has gotten much better than it used to be. They use something called neural machine translation, which means that it translates whole sentences rather than word for word, like a person might do if you're looking it up in a dictionary word for word. So they try to put it into context. It's not perfect, but it's sure a lot better than anything that's in second place, I think. When I checked, there were over 240 languages available. Yeah.
I wanted to go back to when you were talking about finding ancestors. Many of the ancestors for our folks here would be in Europe, in the European languages, and we don't name. Would Google Translate work on those?
They might. The best way would be to put the information in and see if it works, see what you get. That's my theory on Google. See what you get. You can't hurt anything. Because you can copy and paste the text into Google Translate, or you can paste the URL of a website. So if you come across a website in German language that you don't understand, paste that URL into Google Translate. It will translate the website. Now, Google Chrome, the browser, also has a translate tool, which will do it automatically. And that's just probably a little bit easier and more direct. And there's another fun thing that I think Renee showed me this a year or two ago. The mobile app of Google Translate can be used with camera on your phone. So if you have something, you take a picture of it, and by pressing a few buttons, and I couldn't demonstrate that here, you can possibly get a translation of the document. This is what the text space looks like. You put you tell it which language. You can do the drop down thing where it says detect language, and then you can choose what you want, or you can leave it at the default where it will try to pick up what language you want, and then the language that you want it to be translated into. Or you can even, there's a microphone there, so you could speak it. I guess what you could do is you could speak English and ask it to translate it into German. Might be a possibility.
Mary, is it good enough to use handwritten?
At some point, sometimes. The old German script that I can't remember the name of, it has some trouble with. The more modern things, it can't. Hit and miss. Yeah, that. This is, my husband ordered a small electronic device, and all the directions were in the Chinese language. Well, I don't know about you, but we had trouble reading this. So he very patiently got out his phone, took a picture, used Google Translate, and then translated into, he translated the directions, and I think for the most part, they worked. But he was very patient, but that's kind of the exception. But that shows you the limits, or it shows you some of the things that you can do with it. So I'd say use it for what you can. Google also has image, lens, and photos. We'll talk about Google Photos first. If you have an Android phone that operates on the Google platform, basically, and the photos you take are generally uploaded to Google Photos. I believe you can turn that off or not. But that's one way you can get your photos into Google Photos. It's good for storage because, as I say, you've got 15 gigabytes of storage, although the photos will take up more space than a text document. Google Photos uses facial recognition, so they will be able to identify, and sometimes they'll even be able to tag people with the name. Again, you know, a little scary, a little not, I don't know, you'll have to decide on that. It's got a good search function. You can also upload videos and edit photos and group the photos into albums. So for digital storage, and when you consider the amount of pictures, number of pictures we take these days, you know, it's snap, snap, snap with your camera, where when you had to print the film, you weren't quite so quick with the finger to take that many. So it's good. Google Lens says their motto is search what you see. It's good for, I don't know, you come across an old implement or a picture of an old implement that your great-grandfather had. What was this? Well, you can use Google Lens to do a search for comparable photos, and a lot of times they'll identify it that way. Or sometimes if you're looking to identify, I don't know, a particular dish, you might be able to upload that and find comparable ones and more information and history on it. So I think it's worth giving it a try. And Google Image, there's something called reverse image search. You can upload a photo and if you don't know who it is, and it will look to find, it'll look to match that photo. And if somebody has uploaded a very similar one, it'll show it. It'll also show some that aren't as closely related. But it is possible that if you're trying to identify a photo and you don't know the names of the people, if you upload it, you might find that somebody else has uploaded it and has the names there. So again, worth a try. There's an app that I'm using a little bit more now. We talk to our daughter weekly via Google Meet, and it's an online video app, meeting app. I guess you'd compare it to Zoom. You can do up to an hour free for 100 participants. The quality is good. I can't really think of any real downsides. I don't know about recording on it, if you can do that. This would be great if you had a relative you want to collaborate with, to interview, to chat with. If you could just meet, I guess now in the days, we don't pay for long distance generally with a cell phone, but if your data is limited or if you want to see them do the visual part, it's great. You can also turn off the video part and just do audio. As far as I could tell, you don't need a Google account to join a meeting, to accept it, but you do need a Google account to initiate a meeting. So since I have a Google account, if I sent something to you and you're using, I don't know, Yahoo, and you don't have a Google account, you can still click on that link in the email and then join the meeting. So joining is very much like joining a Zoom meeting. I think it's a little less complicated, frankly. And my last thing is YouTube. Did you know that YouTube is owned by Google? Yeah. They own a lot. And I think we're finding that YouTube is useful for more things than just cute little cat videos. Hey, that's great to look at those too. But YouTube to me is useful for educational. You'll find so many genealogy videos and how-tos and explanation of something. Right now, kind of a hot topic is artificial intelligence, chat, GPT. There's so many videos on that if you want just a little more understanding of it. And, you can stop the video, you can, I would say rewind, but go back. And so from an educational point of view, it's great. So for the how-to videos, they'll tell you how to use a GEDCOM. Maybe they'll talk about different types of software. In fact, the leading Roots Magic and Legacy Family Tree and so forth, they have their own YouTube channels. So they will demonstrate how to do some of the particular items in their family software. Well, you've got your own private tutor right there in the privacy of your own home. And it's also kind of fun to look up historical information on YouTube. Things from other countries, old time. There's a lot of archival video, archival footage there. So again, can give you the context. Most of the things on YouTube are free. You can subscribe to different channels. In fact, I get a little tired of it. You look at a video and you say, please subscribe and click the bell. Well, they want to get their numbers up. That's up to you. Right here, and they're listed on the handout too, some suggested YouTube videos. The first top one by Connie Knox, she's just fantastic. I would start there, but there are other ones too, and you may relate better to some of them than to others. So they all have something, and you might find exactly what you're looking for. Here's just an example from the page of Amy Cross, which is one of the ones I recommend. But you can see, you can make a playlist. I guess she's got a store, she's selling something. That's fine. That's how they thought that. But you can see where it says subscribe. And what happens when you subscribe is you get a notice when they put out a new video. So, and you don't have to do that. So anyway, that's that. Well, plus one, Blogger. Google has a service called blog, it's called Blogger. So if you decide you want to create your own blog, publish your own story, you've got it free. Maybe you don't quite want to go the website route. This is an alternative to tell your story. And if you, again, you can purchase a custom domain. So if you want to use your name or you want to use something more creative. Otherwise, your URL will be something like marylora.blogspot.com. So again, you can do that, but it is free. It's a great way to share your information. Blogs are often called cousin baits. I have a blog, not on Blogger. I use an alternative called WordPress. I've had people contact me and say, oh, do you know about this? Do you know, I really enjoyed your story about this or that. So I would say, give it some thought. You decide what you want to publish. You decide if you want to make it public or private. So my only caution is if you're going to be publishing something, use common sense in regard to living people and people's privacy. So that just comes in with good genealogical practice. So I didn't talk about, there are lots of other things that Google has. The last page here lists, Wikipedia has an article of where you can find a list of all the Google products. And I think there's also one for the Google graveyard of forgotten favorites, things they've retired. But this lists the products that they have, and it's quite extensive. So the Google News Archive, they were trying to archive all newspapers. They ran into some resistance from the publishers, so that got paused. The newspapers are still there. They're difficult to search, but it's still available. I just read one tip for searching it is to see if you can find it in another source and then do a search for the name of that newspaper. I don't know if that works. Google Chrome is a browser, which I mentioned briefly. It integrates very nicely with Google. And then Google Maps and Google Earth is a topic for another presentation. So we'll have to wait on that for another time. But those are very, very useful. So I think that's all I have to say. So I'll take any questions that you.
Someone with the microphone. Give me one sec.
Maybe you already covered it on this slide here, but where would we find a list of the Google products that are available under that last URL?
Yeah, yes. At Wikipedia. That's a list of Google products.
Okay.
You could also try Googling it. If I were live, I would do that. You could just say list of Google products, Oh,
And we could add them or change them in our settings? Are these all apps that you put on your, say, desktop computer, or?
are you talking about the ones I discussed today?
Yeah, any of them, yeah.
Yes, more or less they are. Google Keep is an app that you would install. The search engine comes up automatically. I mean, the search box, when you go to google.com, you get that box. The browser you would install. So yeah, for the most part, Google Drive you would install. Yeah.
I guess on a desktop or laptop, you go into settings to change the browser. Is that correct?
Yes, you can.
I've never tried it, so.
And if you're downloading any of these, I suggest you do it. If you're on Android, I guess it's the Google Play Store. If it's on Apple, is it the Apple Play Store? I can't remember, but App Store. Yeah, Apple is real strict about what they allow to be downloaded. Yeah.
I just saw a thing on the computer the other day where Google Contacts is being changed app.
Oh, it doesn't surprise
I
me.
didn't read too much about it because
Yeah.
I use the contacts in Gmail,
Yeah.
and I think that's about all I need.
Hey, if that works for you, that's great. Yeah, it's kind of the Google gives and Google takes away. I think it's what you'll see. It's a changing landscape. Sometimes I think, whatever. Any other questions? So,
Okay. I just also want to promo that we have all of the past Genealogy Plus recordings on the library's YouTube channel. So that's a good plug for if you've missed any of the past presentations. That's a spot that you can see those all the way back to, I think, 2020 when we started recording.
Yeah, great.
I might add, you mentioned Google owns YouTube.
Right.
That's fine. I got a complaint about YouTube that there's nothing up to date on Roots Magic
Mm.
YouTubes, because I went in to find out more information about site, or rather sourcing and search and sourcing and source and what do you call it? Your sources and cite your sources,
Okay.
citing and sources.
Okay.
And the latest they have is version 8.
Okay.
They don't have version 10, which they surprisingly came out with recently.
Yeah, so things aren't always up to date. And as with any YouTube video, anything you take, you have to evaluate it because there's a lot of nonsense out there too. So, but they do label their, Google, at least in the search results, will label the ad as either sponsored or as an ad, so that, but those usually show up first, and then all of a sudden you're searching, you'll see another ad. So just the way it is. So. Anything else? Okay. Well, if you have any questions, you can email me at webmanager@storygenes.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Mary. We appreciate it and hope to see you all next month at next month's Genealogy Plus.